Hi YouTube and welcome to my channel. My name is Patrick. Today we're going to talk about the most secure Linux distributions and also some Linux distributions that aren't as secure as you think. So let's dig right in. So first of all, why is security important in Linux? Often the case is that a Linux device is exposed to the public internet, and that is a very big attack surface because the public internet is a bad neighborhood and people will check to see if your front door is locked to see if they can break in and steal your stuff. Picking a secure Linux distribution for your desktop is actually a pretty serious thing, and the part of this that really matters is that it all boils down to your threat model. You need to define what threats you're trying to defend against and then make your educated decision based on that information. So this isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all thing, but just for fun, we're just going to look at the most secure distributions. Alright, so before we talk about the most secure Linux distributions, let's talk about the top 3 insecure Linux distributions, and this list is going to surprise you. So the 3 well-known Linux distributions that are not secure by default would be Ubuntu, Linux Mint, and Linux Arch. So, whoa, right? I mean, those are really popular distributions. Why am I saying they're not secure? Well, I have some reasons. Let's start with Ubuntu. So first of all, with Ubuntu, there's some bad default settings. So on an Ubuntu system, every user account on the system has access to all the files on every other user account. And obviously you can change this, but it's just a baffling oversight, and I can guarantee you the majority of people who are using Ubuntu Linux haven't changed that setting. And also there's no clean way to do it in the graphical interface. So it really comes down to if you care enough to fix it. Another issue with Ubuntu is snaps. So here's the thing. I don't like snaps and I don't like Flatpaks. My reasoning is, with snaps and Flatpaks, anybody can upload anything to those repositories. And yes, Ubuntu has started doing manual reviews of snap packages, but that's not feasible in the long term. And the whole reason they started doing these manual reviews is because they had some malicious packages get uploaded. So yeah, the Snap Store is... anybody can upload anything to that thing. You can't trust what's on it, which is in stark contrast to the package repositories that come with Ubuntu, where you're getting packages from the maintainers of that distribution. Alright, and then Mint. Look, people love Linux Mint, and I do too. Linux Mint is a beautiful, great distribution, and a lot of people suggest it for new users. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's not as secure as it should be. First of all, there's no automatic updates, which I know, boo hiss, automatic updates. The thing is, you're never going to update your computer if it's not automatic. Well, maybe you are because you're watching a video about Linux, but think about your grandma, think about your parents. They're not going to go out and update a distribution because it gives them a little pop-up in the corner. There was a recent study done, I think in 2022, that highlighted that the majority of Linux Mint users are using out-of-date software that has terrible security vulnerabilities. And so that seems like a pretty minor gripe, but my other issue with it is that it's still based on the X windowing system. And with X, any application can see what's going on in any other application. The third one that I have an issue with is Arch. I've got a few reasons for saying Arch isn't as secure as it should be. First of all, it does not come with SE Linux and it does not come with AppArmor. Yes, you are free to install them just like you're free to install everything else on Arch, but it puts the responsibility on the person who's building the system. And most tutorials that people follow when they're creating an Arch system do not include SE Linux or AppArmor. And so, you know, that's one of your main defenses on a Linux system. And so by ignoring these things, you're making the system much less secure. Also, the AUR. People install Arch for the AUR. And here's the thing about it. The AUR is much like the Snap Store, much like Flatpaks, in that it's just not secure. Like, the AUR is, again, the Wild West. Anybody can upload anything there, and there have been records of people uploading malicious packages to the AUR. So I know that it might be controversial to say that Ubuntu, Mint, and Arch are not secure, but you'll understand a little bit more about what I mean once we talk about the most secure Linux distros. Alright, so the top 3 most secure Linux distributions are going to be QubesOS, Tails, and Whonix. Let's start with Tails. So Tails is an amnesiac operating system. It runs off of a thumb drive and it doesn't touch your hard disk. What the amnesiac bit means is that once you shut it down, it forgets everything that you did on it. Like, it just wipes it all clean. There's no record of you having ever done what you did. So Tails is a pretty secure option for someone who's really paranoid, but it's not as good as the next options. So then we have Whonix. Whonix is a distribution, or rather a set of distributions, that work together to keep you private and secure online. Whonix does a great job of keeping your private information private, and the whole point of it is to allow you to use the internet without being tracked and without being caught. I don't know what you're doing, but maybe you're a Russian citizen and you want to protest the war in Ukraine. Well, then you're probably going to want to use something like Tails or Whonix, so that you can make sure that the alphabet soup boys don't figure out what you're doing. Alright, and then finally QubesOS. So QubesOS is the most secure Linux distribution that you will ever find. QubesOS is special because it assumes that you're going to be hacked. And that sounds a little outlandish at first, right? It assumes you're going to be hacked, but I promise there's some logic to this. So QubesOS, the way it works, QubesOS is more like a level 1 hypervisor than it is a Linux distribution, but the way it works is that you have a desktop, and then you have applications, and those applications all live in different virtual machines. And these virtual machines are all separate from one another, so you can have Firefox from one virtual machine open, and then Chrome in another virtual machine open, and they will never be able to talk to each other. It really extends to every aspect of QubesOS. In fact, you have a dedicated networking virtual machine, and that virtual machine handles all of the networking for all the other cubes, or VMs. Then you also have disposable VMs. So these operate just like Tails. You spin up a disposable virtual machine, and it allows you to do what you need to do, and then when you close the window, it just forgets everything. QubesOS is a really solid option. And so the whole idea with QubesOS is, let's say you're using a virtual machine in it, and that virtual machine gets hacked. Well, now it's only that one virtual machine that's been compromised, and the rest of your system is clean. So like for example, you'll have a secure virtual machine in Qubes that holds all your passwords and all your encryption keys. And then you'll have a disposable virtual machine that you spin up. And let's say that disposable virtual machine gets hacked. Well, your secure virtual machines are still secure. That's what it means when it assumes you're going to be hacked. It goes out of its way to provide a contingency plan for when your device gets hacked. QubesOS has been endorsed by many people who have to care very much about their cybersecurity, such as Edward Snowden, who is a traitor, but that's not really relevant. But people like Edward Snowden who really have to worry about this stuff. Some examples of other people that could benefit from using QubesOS would be whistleblowers, people who are enemies of their state, like people in Russia protesting the war. They're enemies of their state. They should probably be using QubesOS. Another group of people who should be using it are journalists or crime investigators. People who are in high-risk situations could really benefit from using something like QubesOS. Alright, so to tie things off, what I've done is I've listed off the most technically secure Linux distributions. But again, that doesn't really matter. What matters is your threat model and your use case. First, whenever I'm helping somebody pick out a technology ecosystem, I always first ask them, what are you trying to do, and who are you trying to defend against? because then from there you can pick out the applications, you can figure out the threat model, and then the last thing that you do once you've figured all this stuff out is pick the operating system. It's the final step. You don't start with the operating system and then figure out what you want to do. That's backwards. What you do is you start with what you're trying to achieve and how you're trying to protect it, and then work your way back to the last step, which is choosing the operating system. Although these 3 Linux distributions are the most secure ones you can get, well, maybe Ubuntu works for your threat model. You know, maybe the risks associated with it are acceptable to you, and I'd hazard to say that it's probably reasonable for most people. But again, it just depends on what you're trying to protect and who you're trying to protect it from. Anyway, thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. And if you enjoy this type of content, consider subscribing. And if you liked the video, like the video. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.